911. What's your emergency? This is 911 emergency. What are you reporting
to another excellent and exciting episode of We Speak Dispatch. And
exciting,
it can be questionable.
It's gonna be awesome.
But we're here with Joe and John, and believe it or not, the Leslie's here in my home. So we have my home office. So she's
what a
here
combination.
So it is something to definitely think about. So we're going to talk a little bit about a topic that all of us have a lot of experience in, and that's training. And how has training changed, and what's the impact of the change with COVID-19 and all these things that have changed, where you can't do a lot of in-person classes. You can't, our training's been cut. But my thought is, what's it doing to our dispatchers that can't get a lot of training? They can only get limited amounts of training now. Is that going to have a future impact on the business? So let's kick that idea around a little bit. Anybody want to go first? No, I'll call on you. I swear to God I will.
Well, I'll start.
All right.
There
There are going to be pros and cons to this. Having done some online group training, I can say there are benefits, because folks who would not be able to have otherwise left the comm center can still participate in some regard, because when training is offered, they will broadcast it on computers in the comm center, and then can, let's just say, attend. I don't know how much participation there'll be, but at least they can maybe take a little bit of some nuggets and some information away here and there. Now, the drawback is, as we know, the attention span, just because we have everything else going on.
Right.
And that's going to be a problem we're going to run into, where people are not paying attention, just like on TV when they're watching a show and they're not really watching it. So
right.
Wait, who's talking?
But I also think that there's a couple things. One, I think that dispatchers may get to see additional speakers and trainers. Like John said, a lot of times you still have to staff the center, and they'll get to see additional people, and also the playback of classes. If it's allowed or recorded, maybe they can attend at a different time. So I think training will reach more people. But I think one of the huge drawbacks is when you do an in-person class, a lot of the exchange between participants from different agencies and just your own agency, and then the class exercises that also bring home the material, and kind of, there's different learning styles. Some people learn by listening to a lecture, some people learn visually, some people learn by hands-on activity. And when you do an in-person class, you can combine all of that. Now, the certain platforms allow people to message or ask a question. And so they are making up for that. But I just wonder, how are we going to do some of these amazing class exercises that really drive home some of the material?
Well, that's funny, because someone was talking with me the other day that they have some platform like Zoom or something like that, where they can create breakout sessions and actually say that I want to, and they delegate, you 4 participants are in this session, and they pop in and pop out. I've never been in part of that to actually see it in play, but that does exist. Now, I do agree with Joe that nose-to-nose contact is lost. So I don't know how well virtually we'll do it, and people will have to share their camera, but if they're in person, I'd see them anyway.
Right. Yeah, and I think to the point of the messaging, the chat feature, we all know of some conferences that have been held virtually, and maybe we've put on, being involved in training, put on some classes. And there's also the flip side of that, where maybe somebody who is going to, if they were going to an in-person class by themselves, they might feel less inclined to reach out and meet people, because that's, they're uncomfortable. They don't know anybody in the room, and that's a little bit scary. But if they're sitting behind their computer and they can message someone that maybe, the connection obviously is different, but maybe that anonymity initially gives them some confidence to reach out and maybe make that connection through the chat function or some other forum that's available in an online setting that wouldn't necessarily be something they'd feel comfortable doing in person.
And especially when you think about training generally, and you think like John works for a really large agency, and they have a lot of training availability. I mean, you just have a lot of people working there, and you can do a lot of stuff. If you work for a smaller agency, you probably were sending people to classes because you were thinking, I can't provide training. I can send them to people. I mean, Joe has a company that trains people, and I have a company that trains people. And I will tell you that it does change. For me, I use a lot of networking ideas with classes where I want people talking to each other and engaging, so they can say, oh, you do that? Oh, we do this. How about these things? And they can learn from each other. Where I know that's going to change because of the way we're doing it nowadays, but we just have to start modifying what we do. I mean, it's just the fact of life of what's going to happen.
And I think there are some skill sets that can be taught online with not a lot of degradation to the learning process. But there are some skill sets that you have to have in person, like, you know, a training officer class or a supervisor class or something where building the rapport and the relationships face to face has to happen. But do I necessarily need to go to an in-person class for liability? Do I necessarily have to go to an in-person class for talking to a suicidal subject? Maybe. I'm not saying, oh, we should get rid of all these in-person classes, but I do think that if we look at those skill sets that require building relationships, those should definitely be in person. But because of our current situation,
it's even like I just did a class a couple of weeks ago, and it was all, you know, we all had to wear masks, we all had to socially distance, we all had to do these things. And there was only like, I don't know, 15 or so people in the class. And the situation, what's that?
Still a good size, 15.
Oh yeah, it was great. But I had to modify my own exercises because I couldn't have them in breakouts. So I had to kind of change the way I'm doing it to get everybody involved by changing my tactics. And unfortunately, we're all going to be doing that. I heard a great speaker the other day, not in our business, in corporate world. And he was talking about just what Leslie was saying. There are certain things you can't do virtually. He said, you can't train somebody to swim virtually. It just doesn't work.
You could try, they might go under, but
waterproof case.
So I think it is going to change things, and I think there's more changes coming, because I personally think that bigger comm centers like John's, I think, are going to be like used for these other centers around you that can't send people to training, but maybe they can send one to your place, and maybe you can give them some kind of training. I think we're going to have all kinds of different kinds of things we haven't even thought of yet that's going to come out.
Well, and that's going to be a unique challenge too, because some centers, large or small, they may be able to bring people in from the outside as the vendor to come in or to facilitate the training. But to have a lot of outsider participants may not be available, meaning it's just going to be us, which is going to then lead to a much smaller class, which then leads to also not talking with others outside the confines of our building for that networking thing that we all thrive on, which then may lead to, well, if that's the case, then let's just do it virtually. At least I can talk shop with other people outside of my center.
A couple other things that I could mention is the timing and depth. And what I mean by that is you can put together a class and you've got a class interaction about a topic because you want to hear how it relates to them locally. When you're teaching from a different state or a different region, and you build this class to engage and ask questions to facilitate the material, and that's more difficult virtually as well. And what I mean also by depth is I kind of compare it to when you go to college classes or whatever, and you go to online, or you go to a college class that's offered during summer versus the regular full-blown semester. The depth of the material just doesn't seem as deep. And so for some reason, that has me trying to redevelop, adding more depth to the classes because of missing out on the in-person discussions, and adding some material to really drive the concepts home in a slightly different way. So I think you're going to be challenged to add more depth to your classes, teaching virtually, and also to make sure you're really working on your timing, because if you set 20 minutes aside for an exercise, you may really get ahead of schedule pretty quick virtually.
Right. But I also think, you know, as someone who trains for a company that travels quite a bit, that what associations have seen is that, you know, if we were hosting, say we're going to go to Joe, your agency, or John, your agency, and you're hosting the class and you've opened it up to people in your area. You may
Mhm.
get people from neighboring counties or maybe a little bit further away.
Mhm.
But what we've seen virtually, and I'm sure you've all seen this as you train, is you may be hosting a class and have people from 4 states away now
Mm,
participating in
yeah.
this class, or even outside of the United States. So, you know, we've talked a lot about the networking, but imagine the networking now that's available because I'm talking to somebody who works in a completely different state.
Exactly.
And if we can have that connection, then the networking that we initially thought was very narrow has now expanded to cover many
Mhm.
different jurisdictions and responsibilities. And so that, I think, let's put that in the good column of virtual training. There's definitely, like you've said, some benefits of this that, and I don't think, as far as fiscal responsibility, I honestly don't think that the virtual platform's going away. I really don't. I don't think agencies are going to be able to justify, hold on a second, for this amount of money, I can send 10 people from the comfort of their homes to this training, or I can only send one person because it's going to require travel and per diems and all that other stuff.
I don't think it's gonna, I really don't think that we're gonna lose in-person training. I mean, I think it's gonna keep going. Eventually, when we get past this pandemic, I will go back to in-person training. But I think it's gonna be an addition to online training. So that just means that people that train right now, I mean, Joe and myself that have companies, and Leslie, who she trains for, we have to step up our game, and we have to make that training so valuable that people are going to say, man, I not only want to watch it on TV, I want to see it and experience it. I mean, it's kind of like when we were making training videos. Videos are great, but they serve a purpose. They serve a smaller purpose. We need to have a full thing. When somebody walks out of our classes or turns off the TV, whatever they've got, that they walk away with stuff they can use right now, not something that's some high platitudes of whatever, something they can actually use and say, this is valuable. I can take this stuff. So, I mean, it kind of makes all of us kind of step our games up and really kind of like figure it out and think, how can we make it better?
Yeah.
I mean, that same guy that said you can't teach swimming was also talking about officers and said you can't teach shooting virtually either. So there are certain things we just can't. I mean, you know.
And the one thing for me, Doug, I think that you're going to see also, and this is maybe even a little bit further down the road, is I think you're going to see people say, come to our agency, but can we open it up to other agencies and broadcast you like on our website so that other agencies don't even have to travel to come see you. They're going to blend the two. And
That's pretty cool.
And
Yeah,
that
would
is
be awesome.
cool, but it is going to be really difficult for a speaker not to move or walk around so that they're on camera and somebody asks. So it's going to take a talented videographer to be a part of that, or just a platform that allows that to happen. But I think you're going to see that as well, so that the agency that's hosting it gets the in-person feel, and the surrounding agencies also can.
Yeah, we actually have one of those set up for October, I believe. That I'm going to a location, or I'm sorry, I'm going to teach it someplace, and they're going to show it to other centers that can't come. And I'm like,
live,
which is fine.
Yeah.
You know, that's good for me. I don't really care about that kind of stuff. So my whole thing is I want to get the message out.
Right.
I don't want to have dispatchers sitting in those seats answering those important calls and feel, man, I really don't know what the hell I'm doing.
Yeah.
I want them to have every tool that's available to them to get training, whether it's 10 different companies or 20 different instructors. Who cares? As long as there is a great message behind it. And I think that's our challenge to all of us in the training world is let's make training valuable. Let's make it something that people really do need and not just want to hear.
And accessible. It's got to be accessible too. And I think that's where we, you know, and I think we all agree, obviously, that you've got to step up your game. I mean, John, because you work for such a large agency, you're constantly having people come in and need training at the entry level. And, you know, there are the agency, the organization that I work for, we just spent many, many days filming. It's a self-paced dispatch basic course. So say I'm going to come and work for any of your agencies, and I need at least a foundation to build upon. But the reason that you've hired me is you're already short-staffed, right? And now, oh my gosh, we've got this new person, we got to take them off the floor and do a classroom or whatever. No, instead, here's the option. Here's a self-paced course. It's 40 hours of content. In the next 2 weeks, or how we're going to schedule you for X, 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 and Y and Z, you've got to participate in this academy. So I do think that we are being forced to some degree to, like y'all are saying, come up with and be innovative. But that's what we've all talked about this in all of our We Speak Dispatch courses, is innovation and creativity. And how do we make sure that professional message is getting sent out? And that's going to require us to modify what we do. And it's a cost savings. So John, if you had to send 5 people through a basic course, you don't have to take anybody off the floor. Here, watch this. And, you know, Joe, if you've got people that you've got to hire, or people, this is the other thing, people who are looking to get a job, they can put themselves through this course before they ever step foot in a communication center, and then they're that much ahead of the game. I love the idea, and I don't remember who mentioned it, the having it available after.
Yeah.
So maybe you've sent
the
5
recording.
people. Yeah. But now the other 5 or 10 or 15 people can watch it at their leisure when it's available to them. So I mean, yeah, I agree.
And that's you know, we're doing that right now. I have a company or an agency that wants to
I just wanted to
I don't know what you're doing here. And there was an agent. I have an
Excuse
agency.
me, what are we reaching for?
That's a whole nother broadcast right now. So, but I have
That's
some
on the
right
PM
that-
now.
Yes, they wanted to not only get the class virtually, they want to have it available 30 days afterward, just so they can
Oh.
show it and tell people. And I'm like, that sounds cool to me. It's like, that's why our stuff has to be on the money. It has to be right and real and stuff they can use, and not just, here's a happy video. It has to be something good. So, and something interesting, because you want to hold people's attention as opposed to just, you know, somebody rambling on and on and on. So
Yeah, and the last thing that I've seen, Doug, is I've seen agencies kind of email me and say, you know, we really like this this course that you have available, but can you also focus on this in the course? And I think that's going to allow instructors the ability to do that, because we're going to lose the time set aside for the question and answers or the in-person exercises and stuff. So we can also customize the training a little bit to what they want. So here's the background information on the class, but what else do you want included in it?
Right.
And we can really drive home what the host agency virtually is asking for, because it's more talking to the camera time than what it normally would be. And I think that that's going to challenge the instructors a little bit. And I also think that it's going to allow us to accommodate the people paying for the training to make sure it's exactly what they want.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
That's the thing.
Well, maybe a lot of those 8-hour days being in person would now be 4-hour, like Doug and everyone was saying, is really deliver the meat.
Right.
And it may be, look, we don't have as many exercises just because the nature of the content,
Right.
we just have to cut them out that are done virtually, but you'll still walk away with something you can use
Yeah.
in
And
4
I know,
hours.
I've always tried to make our classes like fun, but with a message. I mean, so you're having a good time, you want to pay attention, but you're getting that message thrown at you and you don't even realize it. So I think that's our challenge with all of this stuff. It has to be not only great messaging, but it has to be entertaining, that people can go, I watched the thing, it's pretty good, I watched it. I mean,
Right.
not everything we do is fun, that's for sure. But I think the majority of training should be entertaining, not
Oh,
not
yeah.
such a boring. I mean, I've been to enough classes where it's so boring, you just want to like leave your seat and go home. It's just, so we want to need to make that exciting. So, all right, so that's our topic for today. My God.
Oh,
So that was a great one.
Yeah.
Thank you for joining me, Leslie, in our home Southern Command Center.
That's awesome.
So I appreciate everybody. You know what we are on, Joe? What podcast are we on?
Oh, no problem. Let me just give you that real quick. We are on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Anchor, Radio Public, Pocket Cast, Breaker, and Overcast. And we're trying, I don't know if it'll be approved, to get on iHeartRadio as well. We're almost up to 400 plays. Keep watching us on all those podcast platforms. We will be posting podcast episodes on most Sundays. And our Facebook and YouTube will update sometime during the week. So we love to see you on all of our platforms. And thank
We
you.
are
to all the-
everywhere.
We are everywhere.
That's right. So you can't
Kind of
get
like
away
a
from us.
Kind of like a virtual class everywhere.
That's right. That's right. All right, everybody. Well, thanks for participating. See you guys next time. If you want to leave a comment or you want to be part of this and join us and be that fourth block or join me at the Southern Command Center over here, please send us an
Right
email and
there,
ask what's
fourth
going
block.
on. Yes, it's right below us. So thanks a lot, everybody. Good night, everybody. All right.
Good night. See you later.
911.